Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the grayscale trusts, and we're also going to give you a quick update on AMC. This was actually requested, and yes, we did see the request on the Bitcoin miners. We'll get to that shortly, but it's not going to be in this video. So, anyways, with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so LTCN, MACD Death Cross still current, histogram still moving down. Actually had to readjust these lines, so I don't know if you guys noticed this, but we did actually have it set like this before. But if I actually measure it by the candle wicks, you guys can see that this trend is actually still intact. So, I mean, I suppose I could keep measuring it like this, but the reality is either way, this thing still has to pop off at some point. It's either basically a downtrend and a breakout and a retest of the trend line, or we're pretty much still looking at a test of the resistance here, which you can see based on the wicks, it is still very current. So we're pretty much in a squeezing pattern at this point, just like we were back here. You can see something very similar, kind of got squeezed in between the trend line, support, and the EMAs, and we're seeing something very similar here. So it's just a matter of time, in my opinion, before this thing does eventually break up or break down. I think unless there's some kind of really, really bad economic news that comes out or the Fed starts cutting, I think likely this thing is going to break out to the upside. That's just my opinion. So on the daily, you guys can see also it's still kind of respecting this trend line, not quite breaking out yet, kind of more or less in this area, just going sideways. We're getting squeezed in between the support and then the EMAs and the trend line here on the daily. It's actually the reverse on the weekly. So the EMAs are down here, serving as support instead of serving as resistance. So that's notable. We have the MACD death cross here. So once again, I'm pretty much going to reiterate the same thing I've been telling y'all for eons now. And that is that this likely is going to hold as our support. If it does not, we'll come down to this trend line, which is like 15, 16 bucks, somewhere there. If we get a breakout of this trend line, we're most likely going to be heading at least back up to this $55 swing level up here, which again is lining up with this big control bar here. You guys can see it right there. It's a massive, massive bar. Very huge compared to any of these others. That's the reason why it's called the control bar, because it is the most bearish high volume bar before the ultimate capitulation. So we're looking at basically around that $50, $55 level as the first target. Second target is going to be right around 75, because again, you look to the left of the chart here, we can see all these kind of wick action, these tops here. That's significant. And then 100 to 135 bucks after that. Keep in mind that LTCN's all-time high is at $510, and the Fibonacci's are way higher than that. They're as high as like somewhere around $2,200. So there's a lot of potential upside to go. So 94% for the first target. The second target is going to be roughly around 171%, and the third and fourth targets will be 262 to roughly about 390% move. We'll talk about the potential scenarios here playing out for the next 6 months for Bitcoin and crypto when we get into the Bitcoin video. We're not going to do that today. All I can tell you guys in short today is that I do not expect Bitcoin and a lot of these, or even, Bitcoin for starters, but a lot of these altcoins, and especially a lot of these altcoin grayscale trusts, to really start ripping to new all-time highs until closer towards the end of the year. I think that's likely what's going to happen. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's likely what's going to happen. So MACD got the death cross here, as you guys can see, so that's not looking great. If I got to reline these up once again, kind of similar to LTCN. So this formation played out a little bit different than I expected, but we are still kind of squeezing in between the EMA support and the trend line here. Last time we did this, as you guys can see here, we had a massive breakout, and it actually did happen a third time. Well, technically this would be the first time, but a third time way back here too. As you guys can see, it got squeezed in between the trend line and the EMAs, and then boom, took off, squeeze, trend line, EMAs, boom, squeeze, and now we're in between the EMAs and the trend line. So pretty much what we're looking for here is for this thing to move from where it currently is to the swing high up here. So again, the swing high is at $24. And the move to the swing high is 110%. So support, you're looking at roughly about 10.5 to 13. And then 18 to 20 on the resistance. So I'm going to pop down to the daily time frame here. You guys can see, the setup in between the support and the trend line is very similar. And also, like LTCN, the EMAs here are serving as resistance on the daily instead of support, like on the weekly. And we do have a MACD death cross. So that does indicate to me that there is some pretty heavily correlation in between LTCN and BCHG. So, what was I going to say about LTCN? I was going to say something about LTCN. Sorry, guys. I forgot what it was at this point. So, anyways, HZEN, you guys can see HZEN does actually look quite bullish. So this breakout was actually confirmed. This lineup is not quite perfect here, but you guys can still see we had 2 confirmation candles above the trend line. EMAs are starting to point up. That's always a good sign. So as of right now, I say this trend line is going to be support. That's roughly around 480. The resistance currently is 680 to $8. If I was going to swing this or even look for a target, I'd be looking closer to the swing high at 1050. That's just me. So from the current price to the swing high, it's not a very big move. Well, actually, I take that back. It is pretty big. So 54% move, but not nearly as big as if it pulled back to this trend line, which again could always happen. That would be about 110%. You can see the histogram also on the MACD is starting to kind of become less bearish, and it looks like we might have a golden cross soon on this thing. So if it gets past that swing high, potential targets up here could be the top of this resistance, so $12. This wick about $15.50, and then the ultimate high up here is $30. In my opinion, I think HZEN probably goes much higher than that. I could see HZEN probably easily doing at least a 10x from the current price. Again, the Fibonacci state that this thing could be like as high as like $250 or something like that. So it's pretty insane. But yeah, I would say that's definitely possible. So ETCG, we got a break. Whoops. Okay, so I don't know what the heck happened there. Sorry about that, y'all. This thing is doing some weird stuff right now. So yeah, this one's really hard to line up. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So that makes more sense because we're kind of testing the trend line as we come back to pull back to it. So we got this green candle above support. That's very good. So we're coming back and retesting support in the EMAs. It's very bullish. The targets that we're pretty much looking for here would be the top of these wicks, so 1960, and then the next target I would say is probably going to be up roughly about $30 or so. So the reason why this thing is popping up again because of the spot Ether ETF news. You can see the MACD is also starting to become less bearish. That's a good sign. And the trend line as of right now, if there's going to be a pullback, sits at about 1220. So let's go ahead and see what these potential moves would be. So from the current price, let's say to the swing high up here is going to be about 30%, and then 33%. And then if I were to go to the next target, try to get this lined up nicely, we'd be looking at about a 95% move. And again, if the Ethereum Classic Trust is likely not going to start really moving until the spot Ether ETFs start trading and the institutions are buying them, and then Ether rips to the moon. Once that happens, I suspect ETCG is going to see its day in the sunshine, so to speak. So Ethereum, golden cross on the MACD, that's very good. Golden cross on the RSI, everything looks bullish. Big, huge, fat, green breakout candle with a lot of volume, as you guys can see here. 54 million shares traded. That's huge. So another thing to point out, we got a cup and handle pattern here. So this was the handle. As you guys can see, we got a big fat green bar that confirms the cup and handle breakout. So the target for that's 100 and let's see if I measured this right. Yes. Okay. So this does appear to be correct. So it looks like the target's going to be roughly around $160. I know that sounds crazy, but if I actually do the Fibonacci retracements from the macro high to the macro low, you can see that the top level up here is actually $273. So even the top Fibonacci on the macro scale would be much, much higher than that price. But that's just for the cup and handle pattern. So that's not ultimately for the actual potential all-time high. So pretty much from the current price to the cup and handle target it's a pretty big move. It's 370%. As you guys can see, that's very bullish. So FILG, this thing has actually had another bullish week, and I kind of really wish we had bought down here, but we kind of were really just waiting for this thing to get to support, and it faked us out and did not happen. So we still do not have a trend change yet. So high, low, lower high, lower low. And then the question is, what is this now? In order to see a trend reversal for us to go bullish, we need to have a candle close right above these bars here at 160. In order for it to continue to be bearish and confirm a lower low, we would need to get below these candles down here at 56. This is how trend trading works, okay? I'm just showing you guys these little squiggly lines is exactly what we'd be looking for. So the histogram on the MACD is turning less bearish. That's a good sign. We do have a candle close above the EMAs as well. That's also a good sign. So we retested this trend line. Boom, went above the EMAs. Everything looks very, very bullish from this point. So from the current price to the all-time high, as you guys can see, 180%. Now, if I were just to show you guys the potential pullback target, which again is all the way at the bottom of this trend line, that's about an 85% or 82% drop. So from the trend line, well, actually, the trend line would be even lower than that at this point. So let me actually adjust this real quick. So, I mean, it could stop at this support. That's a possibility. So we'll just go ahead and start with that, because that would actually be the first line of defense here. So about a 70% drop all the way down to 37%. As you guys can see, it would be the drop on this thing would be pretty ugly, not gonna lie. So, but from that point, if you manage to get in on the dip at that support and ride it to the high, it would be a 942% move. Now, I want to show you guys what the next swing, assuming that this thing makes higher highs, what the next swing levels would be for the Fibonacci. So from swing high to swing low here, the max target you'd be looking at is about $1,500 on FILG. So that's pretty substantial. GBAT still looks very bullish, kind of indecisive here on these indicators, but we are above the EMAs. That's a good sign. This red bar is not lower than the green one. That's also a good sign. So as of right now, from the current price to get to the all-time high is about 90% move. If it gets a pullback, I would say likely it probably pulls back at the absolute best case scenario, probably back into the top of this support, so about $10. Up to the swing high, roughly about 233% move. So GLIV, slight pullback here, but still above the EMAs, very bullish looking. Histogram's turning less bearish. The only thing I don't like about this bar is that this bar right here is actually a shooting star candle. That is a very bearish candle. For anybody that knows trading, that's obviously not a good sign, especially on a swing high like this. So 104% move from the current price to the swing high. If it gets a pullback, we might maybe stop like somewhere around here, maybe 26. This is a lot of price action being traded there. From that point to the high would be about 225% move. So G-Link, this thing is definitely looking very bullish. So you can see this green candle is well above this red one. We're above the EMAs, above the support, above the trend line. Everything looks very bullish as far as I'm concerned. The EMAs are curling up on the MACD. The histogram is turning less bearish, and we're also about to get a golden cross on the RSI. That's all very bullish confluence. So from the current price to the swing high, as you guys can see here, about a 61% move. If we get a pullback into the trend line, which is about $90, it'd be about 143% move. So whether you guys want to wait for a pullback or not, that's entirely up to you. But anyways, so GSOL looks very bullish. The current price is 473. The all-time high at this point is 583, 585, somewhere in there. Pullback would be roughly about the convergence of these lines, so I'd say roughly about 370 or so. From shoot, I don't know why it does that. So we'll just say roughly from about the lines to the all-time high is about 53% move. Just to show you guys where the next potential Fibonacci's could be, assuming this is a swing high to swing low scenario and there is a breakout, you'd be looking at about 1540 on GSOL. So GXLM, pull back into the EMAs and the trend line. I probably actually have to adjust this trend line a little bit because I don't think it's actually spot on with the wicks. There we go. Okay, so we're retesting the trend line. So the target we'd be looking for is up here at 70 bucks. So from the current price to the target, about a 70% move. All right, the Mana Trust. So got to be above the EMAs, getting a pullback to retest. Not really a super bearish candle. I'm not too worried about this. Everything still looks bullish as far as I'm concerned. So 144% move to the top, which again is 70%, or sorry, not 70%, $70. So if we get a pullback, likely going to pull back to about 20, I would say. That's what we'd be looking at. The move from there to the high would be about 238%. So Zcash, we kind of have a curling up here of the price action with the break of the trend line that looks very bullish. Again, I will reiterate that I think the target's going to be this wick high up here. So 70% move from the current price to the wick high. Pullback zone, probably going to be the top of the support where all of these candle bodies are. And again, that is going to be roughly about $5 a share and 103% move. Now, in terms of which ones I think would be the best buys at this point, I would say LTCN is a pretty good buy because, again, we're sitting at support and kind of the apex of this coiling move here. BCHG, also a good buy. Again, this is not financial advice. You guys can do what you want to with your money. I'm just telling you guys what I'm seeing on the charts. So HZEN, I'd be holding off on this one if it was me. ETCG, I would also be holding off on this one because I'd be waiting for kind of a lower retest of these EMAs in the trend line. ETH definitely would not touch this one at this point because it's already made its move. PhilG, a little indecisive on this one. I'd say I'm probably neutral. I wouldn't want to buy this, nor would I want to sell it. If I was already positioned from down here, I would not be selling. But if I was positioned at this point, or if I was not positioned at this point, I should say I would not be buying. Or if I did buy, I would DCA down. GBAT, I wouldn't be touching this one either because the place to get in was kind of right in here in this area. GLIV also wouldn't touch this one. It's already made its move. G-Link, this one's kind of, I don't know, this one's a little iffy. If I was going to get into this one, I'd probably just DCA in at this point. I would not be putting a heavy amount in. I'd slowly start and then kind of just dip by as it comes down. GSOL, I would not touch this because, again, there's a lot of support down here that could have been bought up, and it's already kind of making its move at this point. GXLM, this is a great buying opportunity because, again, it kind of broke out, but it came back and retested this trend line here. So, I mean, this is pretty much picture perfect. It's as good as it's going to get. Mana, yeah, kind of on the fence on this one. I would, if we were going to, we did sell our Mana, by the way, just so y'all know. But if we were going to buy back in at this point, we would just DCA in because we don't know with the retest if it's going to rip or it's going to dump. Zcash, same thing as Mana. All right, so let's go ahead and get into AMC because I did promise y'all that we were going to talk about this. So just so you guys can see, we do have AMC. It is up a little bit today, so we still have the 634 shares. The markets did kind of a 180 today. It had a super bearish first half and then a super bullish last half. I have no idea what happened, but you can see a lot of red going on here. But for some reason, AMC is up today. Gee, I wonder why. It's probably because the super shorts have been shorting the living shite out of it for like the last few weeks or whatever, ever since we got this kind of wick here. Okay, so we still have a bullish divergence going on. So the MACD is going up and the price is going down. This has been happening for a very long time. So I suspect based on that alone, And the fact that we haven't had a bullish confirmation breakout yet, this wick does not count in my opinion. This was just the starting point. But we are still in the bullish divergence. I do think this thing is absolutely going to shred to the upside when the shorts get caught, when the CAT system, if you guys don't know what that is, the CAT system basically excuse me. How do I put this? In short, the CAT system will force institutions to be more transparent about their transactions. And if they're not, and they get caught red-handed, they will be in serious doo-doo with the SEC. And they do not want that because there is potential there for criminal prosecution, referral to the DOJ, as they would, this is how they would say it, referral to the DOJ by the SEC. And the SEC could potentially just smash the crap out of them with a bunch of fines. You guys know how the SEC is. They're the financial watchdog of the government. It's essentially what they do is they regulate the stock markets. So if the hedge funds, institutions that are, especially the ones that synthetic short this one's above and beyond the float, if they get caught, they're going to be in serious trouble. I can tell you guys that right now. So AMC on the weekly still does look kind of not so great. But as you guys can see, AMC on the daily still holding above the EMAs here. The RSI is moving up, which is kind of interesting. So it's weird because the price isn't really moving up, but the RSI is moving up. So I find that to be a bit odd. So MACD here, we have a death cross. That's not great. But again, it doesn't necessarily indicate there's going to be a sell-off. In this case, I would say it's not really relevant because looking on the higher time frame, once again, I mean, we have this absolutely ridiculously insanely long bullish divergence. So with something that's been kind of coiling and playing out basically for almost 8 months at this point, I would say there's a very strong likelihood this thing breaks out to the upside. If I had to guess, I would say with a combination of the CAT system, the T+1 settlement, it's no longer T+2, y'all, just so you know. Recently it was changed to T+1, which is very good for traders and investors because you have to spend less time now waiting for settlement to take place. But all those things combined with GME earnings, which is coming up soon, I would say likely we're going to have a breakout sooner rather than later. Again, no guarantees, but that's just my opinion. I do think it's going to happen. So again, the targets are going to be these gaps up here, which you guys can see we got pretty close to back here. But again, there is this resistance here. So gaps, generally speaking, almost always get filled on the indexes. This almost always happens. I suspect with AMC, like with other stocks, this is probably going to happen too. So if I go back here in time, you guys can see that these gaps never actually got filled, okay? Usually what has to happen for a gap to get filled is it has to get filled after the gap occurs, okay? Not before, after. As you guys can see, we've only been down after these gaps. So that tells me at some point, at the very least, at some point, AMC is going to come back up and fill these gaps between $16.50 to $19.50 and $36.50 to $43. So I will go over the CAT system and T+1 and all that stuff in a later video. Not going to do it in this video because, again, there's time restrictions here. But you guys can see that the GME earnings is coming up very, very soon. It will be next week, as a matter of fact, on June 5th. So June 5th, you guys can see right here is next Wednesday. This could be very bullish for AMC. So anyways, this is a Grayscale Trust and AMC. Hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.